And so the question becomes, should you have an externality that comes and controls it, or should you allow the system to work out the kinks itself? And that's a judgment call that is being made, and they have come on the side of having an external agent try and control it. And they have done various things. They're increasing the capital requirements on banks. They are controlling the level of proprietary trading on bank balance sheets. They are limiting the free option for traders, right? A trader, the way traders used to get paid was you put on a trade, you make money, you get paid now. And you took the cash home and put it in your checking account, and then you could spend it any which way you want. And then the same position blows up later, you're not paying the price. So they're changing. So now the pay has become, first of all, it's much lower. A bunch of people have been fired. So they've brought down the contribution of financial services to the US economy used to be like 25%, believe it or not. It's too high. So now it's down to maybe around 20%. So it's slowly coming down because fewer people are involved in it. And these people are getting paid less. And they're getting paid on longer time horizons. So the market is sort of adjusting, going through the adjustment process. But having said that, I brought that example up because there were some things, what the market did was take this old tool, securitization, and applied it to a whole new market, which was these low quality loans, and that sort of got out of control. But some of the intellectual capital that came out of it, right, and the knowledge that came out of it can then be applied to something maybe even more complex and even more socially valuable, right? Like in this example, cancer research. So that's the thought process there. But where it gets out of, where it gets uncapped, if people start, 20 billion is nothing, by the way. AIG, which got bailed out, so the stimulus package was $1 trillion, right? The total amount that has been spent is maybe 2 trillion on various things. AIG, just one bank, was bailed out for $120 billion. So 20 billion looks like a big number, but in reality, relative to the potential payoff, it's not a big number. So it's really capped, right? Yes?
My question is about motivation. You said that, the case for greed.
Yep.
Now, actually, this is a very important topic.
Yep.
How to motivate people.
That's correct.
Teachers, that is what we try to do.
Uh-huh.
Now, in the area of academics and research, there is an opinion which people say is based on research that monetary rewards do not promote excellence. Monetary rewards do not promote excellence.
Okay.
So what would you have to say? Is this have you come across a statement like this? I'll give an example, Daniel P. For example. So it said that the role of extrinsic motivation in excellence, promoting excellence, is limited. What do you have to say about it?
Okay. Yeah. Well, that is a very good point. The monetary mechanisms are one way of incenting people, right? Now, greed itself has many dimensions, by the way. I mean, greed, very often people think is only about money, right? Greed is not, that's the popular, but if you look at the dictionary definition of greed, it doesn't say anything about money. It says you want excess of, you really want excess of something, not necessarily money. So it could be, societal standing. As a professor, Sripad, it could be, you really want to, win the Nobel Prize or something like that. Whatever it could be. It is yearning for something beyond what you actually have or what you actually need. That's the dictionary definition. And that yearning could be money. For a lot of people, it is money, because that's the simplest mechanism to incent people, right? And the vast majority of, in a practical sense, that is what is used to incent people in organizations, right? Or in businesses. Even if you're an entrepreneur, You're greedy. I mean, greed is a big part of it. You want to become the next, Zuckerberg or Gates or whatever. I mean, you just want to kick ass. I mean, this is it, right? And that's a big motivating factor. Now, in areas like academics, right, in your profession, yes, I mean, I think there are other dimensions because the monetary thing is sort of squashed out, right? There's not much of a variation. If you're working for the government of the United States, right, then you have other dimensions that people use, right? And you're a mid-level manager, and then you want to become a slightly higher level manager or whatever, right? And then you're trying to stomp on somebody else to get there, right? So there are many dimensions to it, but for most people, I think money is what incents them, at least in a capitalistic sort of system, which is the system that is out there, right? That is the system that caused this. Other systems, other societal systems might do other things, And even other societal systems, when they are freed up, you saw what happened to the Soviet Union, right? It broke up, and immediately a bunch of guys made out like bandits. I mean, the money that has been made, and the same that has happened in India, right? I mean, after the liberalization, I mean, you have had a bunch of people just make boatloads of money. So, unfortunately, this is the reality. This is the practical reality we live in, And if it is applied intelligently, I think it is. The question is, can it be? Well, one hopes that it can be. There was one more. Yes, please. That's correct. Well, learning is always good, right? I mean, I focused on engineers learning finance because this is an engineering crowd. That's it, right? If I was addressing a CA crowd, I guess I would. But I think fundamentally, it's much harder for a CA to learn engineering than it is for an engineer to get an appreciation for finance. I think so. I think it is just tougher. No, I just think it is tougher. Maybe I have a bias. Yes? Uh-huh. Well, yeah, well, let me put it this way. I got a degree in it, but I never worked in it. So I would be sort of paltering with the truth if I started offering advice to you on the aerospace business. I can tell you broadly from, again, as a finance person, I can tell you that there's a lot of pressure on defense spending in the United States overall, right? I mean, people are talking cutting it, right? Particularly Obama has been talking a lot about cutting it, right? And those cuts, I mean, I will tell you the United States Army or defense spending is like more than the next 10 countries combined. It is gigantic. Now, they've justified it by saying, that gives them exceptional superpower status, right? But when you have massive fiscal deficits, you want to cut things down, and that's one area that they're looking at cutting. So if I were, are there going to be great opportunities in aerospace over the next 5 years? I would say probably it's going to be tough. That would be my guess. But this is not from my knowledge of having worked in aerospace engineering. So you have to take that with a ton of salt, actually. This is a finance guy talking. I'm sorry? Ah, okay. So you know more than me. Yeah. Unfortunately, no. Yeah. I studied it. I have never worked in it. Yeah.
My question is, when it comes to global finance,
Mm-hmm.
don't you think India should look towards East, especially China?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you see the US government and US economy,
Mm-hmm.
they themselves are debtors to China.
Mm.
China, they have to pay China billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, and now even after Obama finished his re-election, the first country to visit was
Mm-hmm.
He has visited
He has gone east.
those are economic growth, globalization, those are still not open. So, don't you think, so today nobody in the global market stock market, nobody is talking in terms of the American stock market or the German stock market. People are all talking about the Asian stock market, the Hong Kong and Singapore. So don't you think, we in India should look more towards China and Japan? Unfortunately, Japan had a problem with the India economy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But don't you think India should look towards east rather than US and Germany?
No, I don't think so. I think we should look at both. Here's the thing, right? I mean, yeah, China, yeah, US is a debtor nation right now, right? But, I mean, there is absolute numbers. Yeah, China, it's sort of like China is as dependent on the US as US is on China. If US stops buying Chinese stuff, China will be in deep trouble. So it's not a one-sided, so when you say the US is in debt to China, you're leaving out that side of the equation. China exports massively to the US. So it is this, it's sort of like a funny, it's a relationship that is built on mutual destruction. It's sort of like the old Soviet Union, the Cold War, right? Where there was this sort of standoff. So China cannot afford, so in that context, I mean, if you take that thought, I don't think that India should be saying, you know what, and Chinese firms, I mean, no, even on other dimensions, I don't think India should be looking to China because there's a great deal of opacity in China. Do you really believe the statistics that come out of the Chinese government? Do you really believe the statistics that come out of Chinese companies? It's a controlled market, right? Well, they have done a masterful job of exercising that control. And obviously, it's a country that is growing very rapidly from a low base. But I'm not sure that these are things that India should, all of a sudden, like wholeheartedly sort of absorb and say we're going the Chinese way. No. Yes? Oh, rating agencies. Yeah, they were big culprits. They were one of the 9 things that I put there. They were, and if you watch the movie Inside Job, you'll see they are pilloried quite a bit, actually, in that movie. See, the difference that they make is they are offering an opinion, not, so it is for you to gauge the opinion. They're not recommending that you buy anything. So they are stating an opinion. And legally they are correct, right? But unfortunately, the way people perceive rating agencies is it's like an imprimatur, right? It's like a stamp of approval. It's not an opinion. So the perception is the people have different perspectives on it, but nobody has been able to nail these rating agencies on the fact that they were, there was some level of subterfuge involved, right, in presenting these things. And unfortunately, the way the rating agencies worked was they are getting paid by the banks to rate the bonds that the banks were bringing to market. So there was a conflict of interest right there. So people are addressing that conflict of interest, but nothing has happened on the opinion front. Now, they have not lost a case. There are many cases against the rating agencies in the US. They have not lost a single one, but they just lost a case last week in Australia. I think it was S&P, a hedge fund in Australia sued them, and they lost that case. But I very much doubt that that will be used as a precedent to go after them in the US. Right? So, yeah, they were a big part of the problem, honestly. And again, they were part of the value chain, and they felt they were making very good money, providing all these rating letters. One more, yeah. The country is not able to repay its debt. Well, yeah, I mean, they default. It's happened. Argentina defaulted on its debt, right? And usually what happens is there is some sort, so when a country defaults on its debt, usually they will default on debt that is not denominated in their local currency. Because even though countries have defaulted on their local currency debt also, Russia did that in 1998, but absent that, Argentina defaulted on dollar debt in the 90s. And there's a big fight going through the international court system, right? So they get sued. Usually what happens is there's a lawsuit. That's usually the way these things are settled. There's a lawsuit that that a consortium of people will get together and say, you know what, these are the Argentine assets that underlie these bonds, and we want to get paid $50, 50%, and Argentina will say, well, we'll give you 0, right? And then they will meet in the middle, right? And they will say, well, you know, let's say there are 100 bondholders, 95 of them will accept the middle, and there'll be these 5 guys who will not accept the middle, and they'll go on fighting. And here's an interesting thing, right? If Argentina loses to those 5 guys, then the remaining 95 also need to get paid what those 5 got paid. So these fights, yeah. Yeah, with Greece. So it's sort of like it's a very game theoretic thing. You know, do you want to be in the 5 or the 95? How do you handicap the chances of you winning those lawsuits? It's very expensive. You're fighting a country, right? There's a hedge fund in New York called Elliott Capital that does this sort of fighting, by the way. That's their business. And just 2 weeks ago, they actually took over an Argentine ship that was docked somewhere in Europe, because that is Argentine collateral that was not in Argentina. So they basically grabbed it. So the Argentine guys came in with like some paramilitary guys, and there was a fight. So that's the way these things get resolved, if they ever get resolved. Thank you very much for your time. And
I have a memento for Kumar. Can I ask the 83 gang?
The gang of 3.
That would be great.
Thank you. Thank you, Srikanth. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.